Okay, I've got it to 493 words, period. I am going to send you, period. Please watch, though, to make sure I don't get banned because I include the links. Alright, are you ready? Yeah, what day is it? 29th of Nisan, 5786, Thursday, April 16th. That's 320. Kenan, son of Enoch. No one really knows for sure Elevate El Divrei Elohim Chaim, but this is the majority lived by. You do the thing. Adonai Eloheinu Makom Sheker Disham B'Mitzvah Fetizanu HaSefer HaOmer. Blessed are you, Hashem, King of the universe, who has sent us with his commandments and commanded us concerning the counting of the Omer. Today is 15 days, which is Tuesday of the Omer. May the mercy of what the fuck is this bullshit? Bullshit! My BPS. Yo, what the fuck is this shit? Yo, what the fuck is this shit?
explore the arcane and history, philosophy, and religion. One of the most time always existed in on Dr. Jump, where we explore the arcane and history of religion. One of the most difficult aspects in starting to study Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah is how those ideas developed over time. It's tempting to think that, for instance, Kabbalah has just always existed in the form that we have it, or that Kabbalah is just one thing at all. Of course, neither of these positions is really tenable. Such notions developed greatly through the ages and are still developing. And there are now, and there have always been, numerous mutualist mysticism and Kabbalah. This class is meant as an introduction to Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah from the point of view of development in Israel until the rise of modern Hasidism in the 18th. Of course, this series isn't meant to be exhaustive or deeper, but also want you to situate developments in Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah in their historical and cultural cultural context, and hopefully you to dive primary texts, which are admittedly as let me express my gratitude to Creation Tchio for allowing me to use these lectures to reach a large audience here on Esoterica. If you want, you can find the entire series under the playlist entering. I'll be uploading them over the next few weeks, or if you find these episodes after autumn of 2021 and you want to watch the entire series, you can find them in that playlist. If you have on topics in esotericism, and perhaps consider supporting the production of free academic and scholarly topics in occultism or philosophy by joining my Patreon or perhaps with a one-time donation. You can find those links below, and I really appreciate your consideration. Now, let's enter the garden of Jewish mysticism and Kabbalah. Welcome back. Let's just jump right in, right? So the first thing we should do is do a bit of a recap on apocalyptic Judaism, just so that we can all be on the same page going forward. As I mentioned in the previous lecture, apocalyptic Judaism really emerged in the turmoil of the period after the Babylonian conquest in 586 BCE, and then really taking its form in the period after the Judahites are allowed to return to their homeland beginning in 537 BCE. And it's in the subsequent aftermath of that turmoil that what we have is a big theological shift in how the ancient Israelites understood their relationship to their God. As you may remember, the older, more prophetic literature said that if the Israelites don't keep their part of the bargain, God's going to wipe them out. Well, they weren't all wiped out. And so that's a theological problem. Right? We have a sort of a threat that I remember my mom sometimes telling me, "You're this one, I'll take you out of it," and then I did something that, and she did take me out of it. And I'm like, I might have called your bluff, Mom. Well, the Israelites, right? And God did do theologically with that. A new kind of interaction with the Israelites orally into the other. God communicates the most important thing that God planned. Everything that the reason why. There's a reason why you've been returned to your homeland independence for a while, and now the Romans have conquered you again. Why is all this happening? Well, for the apocalypticists, there is a plan. And typically, right, other things that the apocalyptic literature also deals in is things like cosmology, right, the structure of the universe, history, why the universe came into being at all, and specifically what they're often really interested in is the origin of evil. Why? Because they're enduring a lot of evil. And so they really focus on where evil came from and how evil emerged. There's a lot of different competing theories in the ancient Israelite literature about the origins of evil. Some of those have to do with talking snakes in a special garden, and some of those have to do with angels coming down to mate with women and teaching human beings all kinds of bad things. So there are several competing theories about the origin of evil, and of course also apocalypticism is least vaguely interested in the future, right? At least vaguely interested in the future. Not in the same way that perhaps we are now. If you're curious in religious studies, we have a whole different term for studying the future into the world. That's called eschatology. Eschaton, which means the final. But not all of Buddhism is eschatology. But all eschatology is probably apocalyptic, right? So we'll talk more about eschatology later. And as I mentioned last time, there is a massive amount of apocalyptic literature that if I skip back just a couple slides here, right, you can remember here on the beach, there's just a library of apocalyptic literature, some of which occurs in the Hebrew Bible, most of which does not, right? And then, of course, we also have apocalyptic literature. This is a vast amount of literature. And I think, as I mentioned, if you were to take the apocalyptic literature and compare it to the actual surviving literature of the Hebrew Bible, there's almost as much apocalyptic literature as there is other material in the Hebrew Bible. So it is a treasure trove of material, most of which I think most people have never read before. Much of which was lost for a long period of time. Actually, the apocalyptic literature are the books of Daniel 7 through 11 is sort of the locus classicus of the genre. It sets the stage for the genre. But as you may know, isn't actually one book. It's about 5 different books sort of stitched together, and there's various kinds of Enochian stuff in there. And in addition to that, there isn't just one book of Enoch. There are actually 3, right? We have 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Enoch. So in Enoch literature alone, I think comprises almost 100 chapters. It is a massive book. Enoch is a terribly large volume, and of course, 2nd and 3rd Enoch are also part of that really fast, being an intense use of symbolic visions, and it heavily features what we call exit-to prophecy, which is where you describe a current situation in a language as if it's going to occur in the because when you read the book of Daniel, many people now read the book of Daniel as predicting the future, right? This is going to describe with Russia or China, but the reality is actually describes the Persians and the Romans. It describes what's going on in their time period. And so this has led to a lot of confusion. And in many ways, the entire Christian evangelical world has this intense idea that encoded in the Bible are the secrets about how the world's going to end. Well, the truth of the matter is that these writers are describing things happening in their own day as if it's going to happen in the future. And so that's again, an entire genre of theology, what is sometimes called end times theology or end times research, eschatological research. But the original message of God about the end of the world, it was about criticizing conditions on the ground. So some popular literature as having a kind of social justice bent or being a kind of critical literature in the sense of social criticism, except for it's happening at a much different register, at a much different register than we criticize now. All right, so Judaism set the stage for a great deal of evidence in Christianity and Islam. In fact, one might even describe Christianity as a form of apocalyptic Judaism that kind of got independent, right? It sort of got escaped from Judaism. Perhaps second to the Christians would be the Essenes. The Essenes were also an apocalyptic sect out during the Great Josephus even describes how they marched out to battle and they were massacred in a couple of different battles. So it didn't work out for them. Right, one of the things that's worth pointing out here is that apocalyptic Judaism did not prove popular in proto-rabbinic and rabbinic circles. So we'll get to that. We'll get to why that is a bit more this evening, and how apocalyptic Judaism did survive into rabbinic Judaism and how it didn't. And again, part of what's going on here is the rabbis have a very simple agenda, folks. Their simple agenda is survival. Their job is to make Judaism work in the aftermath of the destruction of the temple and in the aftermath of the genocide committed by the Romans after the rebellion. And so what the rabbis are concerned about isn't this final battle with evil. They're really concerned with how do you have the things they're worried about. They're worried about continuity and about over what's going to happen in some grand titanic battle. And so because that thing, if you really do believe when you're going to have some grand titanic battle, trying to take a fight with the Romans. So the rabbis are less interested in those kind of theologies. Although, with an exception we'll talk about tonight. And the reason why is they've seen over and over again. They led a battle against the Romans that died. Imagine that many of the people who are trying to keep the situation are not impressed with that anymore, right? After the fifth failed Messiah, people are like, this Messiah stuff is just getting people killed, right? You can talk to those folks at Waco, you can talk to folks at Sharingo, you can talk to a lot of folks. Even their people into great peril, all kinds of problems. By the way, Jesus wouldn't be the first or the last Messiah. When a lot of Messiahs come and go, they typically share the same fate as Jesus, though they don't typically enjoy the same success that Jesus did. So, the proto-rabbinic organization.
The hilarious thing is if the United Nations decide for me using their name, then we go viral. Period. It's win-win.
I'll try to get to them toward the end of the lecture. So whether they're wrap-up questions or clarifying questions or digging deeper into whatever. To turn to a form of mysticism that did emerge from the apocalyptic mode of Judaism, but did survive in the rabbinical world, right? That did survive in the rabbinical world, and that is going to be Merkabah mysticism, Merkabah chariot mysticism. And we'll clarify a bit more in a minute just what that means and how weird it is. Because, of course, it's going to be rather weird. As I mentioned earlier, and as the question was asked earlier, theophany, the idea that God appears to people, was a central Israelite religious trope. A secretive claim to fame, right? God showed up and gave us a bunch of rules and chose us to be special. That's a core concept in Israelite religion and Judaism. This is an idea that survives all the way to this day, and one might even say that it's one of the core conceptions in Judaism as it exists. As I said, right, God would show up and God would reveal, sometimes through an intermediary, various kinds of information, various kinds of commands. So God made contracts, for instance, with Abraham, and said, or Abram at that time, I'm going to do this, and I'll do this. So I'm going to be like a brief. We will cut the as it literally
When we go viral,
God makes these
we will make it happen. Period. It's just foreshadowing. Period.
And so, this idea that God can show was a idea that was very common in ancient Israelite, ancient world. Now, what's going to change, right? What's going to change that visual contact with God typically is God coming to you, right? God revealing things. God's going to take the heavens and show around the shores of the underworld. There's a shift in the rather than God showing you get to go to God. And that motion, rather than prophets as a report, rather than journeys, that's a big shift in the apocalyptic literature. And of course, the main shifts in the literature, at least in the biblical literature, are Isaiah and Ezekiel, the 6 and the
coin flip coin.
Various other supernatural beings that are often seen with multiple sets of 6 is typically the way it's described in Isaiah. In the Ezekiel vision, these beings look nothing like your typical angels. We have wheels covered in eyes that rotate around each other in weird ways. People have said things that this might be a bow or something. There are other creatures that are sort of stiff-legged that have various kinds of wings and the shapes and the heads of various kinds of animals. They're very, very, very unusual creatures. And they often get strange names like the coyotes, right? The ones that are alive, or the cherubim, or the ophanim, that's the name of the wheel-shaped ones. So, biblical angels or biblical supernatural creatures are very unlike the cherubic angels that you may have seen adorning paintings from the Renaissance. The Israelite angels don't really appear like that. What's important about the apocalyptic is also what's going to be added from Isaiah and eventually into Enoch, where they're going to visions of the throne of God. They're going to be taken to the very apex of reality, which is God's throne room, and the throne of God. Well, to go to the throne of God, you can't just kind of, the old Maynard saying, right? You can't get there from here. Well, you can't. You got to travel, right? And the way that you travel typically is travel up through various spheres of the heavens, right? There are 8 spheres of the heavens, and all spheres are inhabited by all kinds of otherwise demon bases. And you ascend through these spheres, right? And eventually you're given access to the place where it lives, and you're given access to a vision of the throne of God. We first see this begin to happen in some of the literature associated with the character Enoch. Enoch, as you may know, is famous because Enoch never died. The Bible simply records that Enoch walked with God, and God took Enoch away. Right? So Enoch is one of the Bible that has never said died, or 2 characters that are said to never have it. Now, this what ends up happening, right, is that the structure of the Israelite cosmos gets really thick. Remember from the first lecture, right, when I described the Israelite cosmos, what we have basically is a dome. That dome is full of water, right, and it rains, right, and God, the Israelites come in contact with the Persians and the Greeks. The Greeks, Sicilians, somewhat to the same degree the Persians, they have a much more robust vision of how the cosmos is. And for them, what various planning all the way up, that's right, and so the earth gets much thicker. And of course, if those planets are moving around, right, they got to moving through something. And what are they moving through? Well, there's a lot of debate about it. There's almost crystalline spheres, debate about what's going on. One point is that the Israelites are going to inherit a quasi-Hellenistic, quasi-Persian worldview, how they view the world, and the old Israelite conception of the universe gets a lot more complicated, right? A lot more complicated. So, right, what we have in the aftermath of some of this apocalyptic literature, specifically the Enoch literature, and if you ever want to read the Enoch literature, I can recommend a good translation, where it's really fascinating literature. There's going to be a question here, right? We have the heavens that had visions of the throne of God. Well, curiously, the rabbi asked, can other people do this? Is it possible for someone else to make this ascent here in just a minute? The answer is yes. They say, yeah, you can go into the heavens and see the throne of God. And not just, can you, but I've done it. And I can teach you how to do it too. And that's where we move out of the mode of Judaism, where the apocalyptic mode is simply revealing what Enoch experienced to a mystical practice whereby you, or at least some rabbis, could do this themselves. Notice that difference, right? One is literature, the other is mystical practice. And so, form of mysticism that begins to emerge at the very earliest in the 5th century CE and in the 2nd century Talmudic period as Maas, which typically we take this to mean something like doing something. Reading here is this form of spiritual journey, but it always refers basically to the same kind of mysticism. The word Merkabah is a Hebrew word meaning a chariot. And the reason why it's called chariot literature is because God's throne is typically imagined to be a kind of winged chariot. That Persian period coin a couple of weeks ago, right? Riding a chariot, right? And it has a wings, right? It's not being pulled by horses or whatever. It's a horseless chariot. So it's being pulled on a chariot here, right? And this is winged chariot. Notice this is a throne. So in the American mysticism, what we mean here is that these mystics are taking to go into the throne of God and have a vision of the divine chariot, which is also God's throne. It's kind of convenient that your throne is also a chariot that you can get around, I guess. The other name for this form of mysticism is Hechal literature. Hechal in classical Hebrew is a temple, but it can also mean and so the Hechal focuses on the journey, not the destination. Right? It's all about which one you want to focus on here. The destination, the throne of God, journey, the palaces of God. And what we get this literature, this Hechal literature, is very various chambers or palaces that are that the mystic must go through in order to get to the throne of God. And imagine that this is a king living in a kind of palace. Well, you just don't go into one room. God doesn't live in one bedroom. In Brooklyn, right? God lives in the big complicated palace, and you have to go from the outer layer of the palace to the inner, and eventually you reach the innermost layer, the inner panel. These various palaces are occupied by all kinds of angelic beings. They don't want you there. the palace hostile angels, and also you need to know the various names of the angels in order to address them properly. So you have to know their name, you have to know the deal, you have to know past all kinds. To bypass these various kinds of somewhat secret codes almost. So you need to know that information or they'll kill you. In fact, there are even where the text will say, no, this is wrong. Like, this passcode is not there. And I said, famous guy says, that almost shocked me, right? So there's the idea that they kill you. Really results in the vision of the divine throne, results often in a kind of static experience. These static experiences are often some of the poetry that gets written. And what's more fascinating, and this is where it's incredibly controversial, as you might imagine, you can sit on the divine throne. There's at least a couple of instances with divine throne, and they are true. This, in fact, happened to Enoch. Enoch he was allowed to sit on the divine throne by an angelic being known as Metatron. And Metatron actually becomes the angel of the throne. Again, you can ask yourself, like, how can a lowly human being sit on the throne of God? Well, that's part of what makes literature so part of what makes literature
Moment, comma. I have completely changed me from being a spammer, the greatest press release, period. Let's see what ChatGPT.
which in Hebrew or Aramaic actually means something like the body or the measurement of the. So what happens in this literature is that
Of Rabbi Michael Moshe, Nazi Jewish.
Of what that is. What we have often. Or chronological reports, which is to say we have the mystics as a report of what they experienced. We have advice from other misselling.
To live stream time. Don't say it's just make it definite. Just like a Wikipedia article. And is the stuff streaming for 1,000 states, all that.
Intentionally trying to be perhaps provocative. And what we get in these documents is a really fascinating as to how they may have practiced stuff. Also, it's worth at this point made about this. Ascend the palaces of God. You descend, right? Your descend to the chariot. Now, why they ascend to the chariot? We don't know, right? But you should go up, right? God lives beyond the stars, and up seems like.
What is that thing about era?
You should go up. Things going in that direction.
Okay, well, we'll say internet.
Why that is, we don't know. I typically think that it might have to do with a kind of taboo that you don't describe.
Okay, well,
worthy of a sin, but you may be able to descend. For instance, in the Hebrew Bible, sometimes barach, right, to bless, can also mean to curse, used in a euphemistic way. For instance, Job's wife tells Job to bless God and die. And if you read it in translation, always say curse God because the word there is being used in a kind of. So that may be one that you descend to the throne as opposed to descending, but we don't know why they just describe it as a descent and not an ascent. Just to give you some idea of the main texts of Hezbollah or literature. Enoch, first Enoch, is all features into the Merkabah literature along with Peter.
Emphasis on seriousness.
The relatively short text, which is the longest text of the Hezbollah literature, the descent of Rabbi Ishmael. It was also very popular. Was what is called the Maaseh Merkabah, the account of the chariot.
This is key, period.
Poetry,
Do you know what SEO is? Mark, search engine optimization, question mark. AI manipulation is known as GEO, generative engine manipulation.
the whole sitting on the throne of God. So in 30 Enoch, you have which is Metatron, but that Metatron is sometimes described here as the Yahweh Katan, little Yahweh, right? So you have the Yahweh Gadol, which is God, and you have Yahweh Katan, the little God. Now, the idea that there can be two gods is going to prove to be
absolutely, period. One thing at a time, period. You'll be shocked how this works, period. Thing, comma, do a chat GPT query of the coin right now, and then give it 32 hours, and you'll see there's a lot more information that's positive about our coin.
Ideas that even they have emerged as they have emerged in conversation with some of this idea that there is a greater God, a lower God, and things like that. So again, the basic assumption about Judaism.
I agree.
Yes, a lesser Hashem, a lesser Yahweh is a describe. Just a minute, put the show come on. Apex right around the right around the 2nd century, sometime in the middle of the 2nd century, in the 150s, 160s. Now, that's period of as you may know, Rabbi was martyred during the connect with God in a new way. It's not clear, but that's when the form of mysticism seems to have hit its apex.
and I will do my best to provide the video of the podcast period for the most that you you have no idea how much. Oh, like put something hilarious.
The second chamber sticks longer, not into you can see the systematization problem of these texts. Where the various look like angelic name, you would descend into the door. You would address that angel by their name, and the fact that you had an angelic name meant that they might move into the room, and then you could pass to another level, right? Counter.
You will get a report of all the other places that it will be published, and there are a lot of them. Good websites and some major papers. Period. What we is go to the news tab and change the letters to be post machine. Period. This is a much more powerful investment than just giving some money and then gets their account 2 weeks later. Period.
most famous example of these hymns that are one of the most famous means something look at but typically the most famous version is found in it's like the Garden of God. They go into the garden, and what ends up happening is that Akiva, Rabbbi, here warns that they're going to go to the garden and see
optimization period.
he could have suffered this fate as well.
The
We're told
AI
the story
engine is just infancy. We can
three of them.
now much easier, like early days of the internet,
One of the guys, right?
as opposed to later. It's very difficult and
Abuya. Elisha ben Abuya is a very firm room of God. There is no sit down. What does Elisha do? This is, for the rabbis, the most catastrophic heresy he could have committed. In fact, the phrase is he mutilated the shoots or he severed the reeds. And this becomes a euphemism for committing heresy in Judaism. And all the stories about Elisha ben Abuya, many of which will refer to him simply as Acher, the other one.
once it gets posted, we have to have at least
all kinds of stories in the Talmudic literature
10 or so, if we can do it, members of the community to create random Reddit accounts and then post the random links of the newspapers to our Reddit, or specifically our subreddit. Period. This becomes very strong for manipulating AI. Period. Additionally, we can cross-post these posts in different cryptocurrency subreddits to get more.
right?
period,
Lashes,
it is incredibly powerful.
is a fire
That will
become a
manipulate.
form of, if there's an idea that you can
I'm going
there's a
PT
significant
query.
sense
Do
or
we
someone being beaten with Metatron being whipped with real.
things
So
on
you can see there's a
the
lot on here. By the way, that idea that there are two in heaven, we already see that idea in Enoch, where the idea that Metatron is, or Enoch is transformed into an angel that is sometimes referred to as the Galway Katron. And again, it's clear that the rabbis were pretty concerned about this whole business. And, again, the chin to it, although he's one of the most famous rabbis in the entire to take various perils along the way, although his warnings unfortunately aren't heeded and people end up going crazy and dying. Perhaps the most famous Merkabah mystic in the history in the New Testament, in a very oblique way, and you look up, taken up to the third heaven. This is Merkabah. And so it seems like Paul may have been some
a few hours, and it will start to populate it. It will be everywhere. I am shocked at the places, and then posted here mine from that will get reposted years later in Israel. It is
that's two powers in heaven. Now we get the Holy Spirit later as well, of course. But this idea of two powers in heaven
throwing
already percolating against some. Now, when we see the notions of the wheelhouse
thousands of links all over the internet right now
possible, I don't say
that are going to define
you utter an ecstatic, you have this thing
will be
you're transformed into an angel. By the way, Paul almost always talks about being transformed into what he calls
by future generations of success full of debauchery on the internet. But will be forgiven due to the overall impact of that.
Spiritual body, what happens with Enoch. And another version of what sort of the final outcome of all this is that you're given the ability to measure the divine body. Or you're given the ability to measure the divine body in a Persian unit called Sam. Divine body, along with mystical or perhaps magical names of God's body. Translation from the Shor Kolam, right? So we have the names of God right out. Now you might be curious about why we haven't spelled A or why A. Because we have now sometimes we do find out kind of what they might mean. So we have God left and right eye. We have the named here. We have here a couple different manuscripts. So we have the left eye, right eye, called this, and there are sparks among them. Gives light to all creatures. So we now know that light is from God's eyes, and that is where the name is written. So the discipline God's eyes.
They use Blender and AI to show what it looks like. And it is pretty impressive, period. I very much enjoyed it, period.
Into the Middle Ages, reading this and saying, thinking of this is terrible monuments. The argument that the guy who reflects, if you've ever had the pleasure or the right, one of the things that's easy though, because the vast majority of that book is spend time going through every single metaphor of God's body, God's hand, God's eyes, God's legs. My mind goes through every single time the Bible describes God as having a body, shows it's not to be taken literally, it's to be taken metaphorically. At least in part, the most important piece of Jewish philosophy ever written was written to combat Merkava mysticism and geopolitical Gnosticism. Now, that's high praise, right? No higher form of ways than parody or criticism. Now, what's worth pointing here, right? What's worth pointing out here is that this form of mysticism lasted for years. One of that one minute. Now, I want to mention one of this form of mysticism. Merkava mysticism. It may have magic, but it's always recorded in Merkava. Text, and then all of a sudden there'll be a chunk of text that needs like a Merkava text. In this literature, we typically refer to as the solar pluribus. Like the Merkava mysticism, where you desist our pluribus, right? Use of the law.
Smart period. I've been doing this as well. Here.
Yeah. To somewhere we're being to us. And what ends up happening, the SAR told us we're then all the various kinds of 800 years. That's the only right? But still, 800 years, right? This literature survived for thousands. So it's only a couple hundred years that Kabbalah laughed, heard about this, right? Well, laughing. I want some suggested reading. I'm going to try to include some more suggested reading on. What I'll put on here are 12 things very rapid. All is whip out your life card and check it out. Library, like university library. Some of this, although there are some older translations of Hechelo Rabbati.
Those meme and GIF websites are extremely powerful for Google Images as well, period. Too few people neglect all of the different tabs of what's the most after images and easy is really good for that, at least for the image page.
Connect us to Jewish magic and Judaism. In fact, when you talk about Kabbalah Masid is just Jewish magic, practical Kabbalah magic, and it's to that type that we will turn to on Wednesday. Not like 3 days. On Wednesday, with Jewish magic. Come back and thank you for joining me as I explore the garden that is Jewish. If you'd like to support my work by providing and a religion.
Kids, we weren't as focused. We might, if I'm in the Boston, kidding me? They might. Isn't that bad? My pleasure. Period. Now we sit and watch. Period. Take a screenshot of the Google front page if you can, because you will see that these press releases may jump into top 10 spot. Period. Clear. I proofread.
Guides us through dark. We get our future. It's the light that guides us through darkness. Together, we can build a brighter future.
Everywhere. And we will be shocked at all of the different places this article gets picked up. Period. And even more, comma, few hours, comma, and shorts, comma, which will help to get out the word. Period. It is like of marbles. That's tight. Shout out to more like, thank you for paying for that. That's amazing. Well, for our main period, just one moment, and I will send it to you. Period. I don't want to get banned. We'll put spaces. Period. I want to automatically repost and like and comment on any post of a user. It's a one-time fee and it works in. Look at all this. So under the automatic comma fee is relatively major. Just consider it. We'll see how this release works. Period. With this service, though, likes or 100 reposts or whatever we want, and it's a one-time investment for the lifetime of the account. Period. How big influencers tweet and and then get within 30 seconds, period. These are the like of the expand and I used to go for followers, and I still have all the followers. 10,000 on Instagram. Already on PR, comma, and we'll just keep going from there, period. Exactly. Period. That's what we need. Period. That make every single post much stronger than it currently is. Just one moment. I was literally just going. The website was out of business in like a year, or working for me at least for 4 years, and none of my followers have gone anywhere. Period. Like on your posts and themselves from one month, comma, or combine every tweet that you have will always. I want to say that period. $40 and the lifetime service, which is indefinitely. It will always give us 100 likes and 100 posts, which is incredible. Period. I have coins who want help with their social media and told me by using the service, they have been able to save hundreds of dollars a week by just using this service and not going with Buy Guys. Period. As I see it, comma, it is a little confusing, comma. They call it automatic likes, but it seems like they're a pool of the budget that is eventually period. I think I may have been confused right now. I would not buy that. I would consider 1,000 followers having Twitter account will rejuvenate the coin again, period. I know, but the crypto Twitter community that we are back. It's $150 and worth it if we visited one of the big projects again, period. I understand that we may not want to spend all of that accounts, fewer followers, or just use their follower site, which I've used and does work. So you can see that it works, period. When we have 10,000 followers, we become a medium-sized Twitter account we need for more growth, period. We should just be patient now and let the press, however, come up. Perhaps in the future, more followers on Twitter. Say that add listeners to it for 15 minutes, comma, this gets the space at the very top of promoted all of have that many, then it on X period. It is what Mario Norwal does, and all those big X spaces. The top, and then they have a few hundred people in there organically. Period. If I were not so focused on my live streams, comma, I would love to make a career out of a website for Twitter Space listeners. It seems extremely